Morning Intuitives, another pre-work video. Thank you for all who subscribe and take the time to listen to some nobody INFJ male talk about various things, including but not limited to life as an INFJ. Please like and subscribe to help these videos, possibly show up in the algorithm to other people that they may help or make sense of situations that they can't wrap their heads around, because for intuitive types, that's a common thing, especially in our youth. I wanted to do a video today, on the dark side of being an INFJ. INFJs sometimes, especially due to us being overrepresented in fiction, and oftentimes our fictional counterparts, fictional characters that represent our personality type are often deified. So I want to, dispel a few of the myths and tell the truth that, yeah, us INFJs have our own dark side. It's different from most other types, especially sensors, but other intuitive types will have a lot of the same weaknesses, which I'm going to discuss here. So the dark sides of the INFJ. Number one, and this one's big for ENFJs too, as I've noticed in my own experience with dealing with them, stubbornness. When an NFJ decides to set their mind to something, no matter how impractical, no matter how bad the odds are stacked against them, we're going to go for it. And there's no talking our way out of it. We're idealists. You're not going to tell us, be practical. If you say to us, oh, that'll never happen, when if it's, technically possible, then we see that as a challenge. Often saying amongst INFJs in INFJ communities is the impossible just takes longer. And that stubbornness, most of the time is unbreakable. If people try to challenge it, we'll just further isolate ourselves and start to believe that people are against us, trying to control us, and sometimes they are. Sometimes that stubbornness is a good thing. In my own personal experience, back when I was 18 years old and said I wanted to become a professional firefighter, and all the boomers were like, oh, you got to go to college, any degree's a good degree, and that job doesn't exist in Chester County, you can't do that, people in Chester County don't do that. And in that case, I give that as an example because it wasn't an impracticality. I mean, there were plenty of departments that were planning to test to hire people in a few months. I had already become an EMT at 17 by putting myself through EMT school. I was taking night classes in fire science. I was a volunteer junior firefighter. I mean, to them, the impracticality of that just came from, but you'd have to leave the area, which is something I've wanted to do since I was 10. And firefighters make a good middle class job, and it's one of the few fields that the boomers haven't kept pensions just for themselves. Number two, high expectations. As much as we try to downplay that we don't have high expectations, they're definitely there. We not only hold ourselves to a brutally high standard, and that's tied to our perfectionism, but we also tend to set high expectations for those that are close to us. Not as high as we have them for ourselves, but pretty high. This is especially true in matters of love. That's why NFJs are often single and picky. In a new relationship, we might feel a little discouraged when the excitement and romance inevitably starts to fade, and we start wondering if we got into the right relationship in the first place. In other words, did somebody fool us? Is somebody using us as a fling? That tends to happen, sadly, in our younger years, and that sours love for us later in life when we might find someone who is the genuine article of everything we've ever been looking for, but because of those bad experiences in our youth, we'll be like, I don't know if you can trust opening up to this person. I remember that pain. I don't want to ever go through that pain again, kind of thing. So, if we be honest with ourselves, and trust our intuition, especially as you get older, when somebody's the real deal. You know what red flags are in your 30s. Probably you didn't at, 18, 19, or even at like 24, 25. Just learn from your life experiences. Don't always assume everything's a pattern, history's repeating itself, which is tough because sometimes that's exactly what's happening. Moodiness. Ah, yes. INFJs. As a friend of mine told me a couple of years ago, who is a theater actor, she said, no actor can properly replicate the brooding and glower of a depressed or downtrodden INFJ. It's just, we do it so well, so naturally, it can't be replicated. And then she later explained that INFJ actors portraying an INFJ character don't count. So don't, come at me and be like, well, look at Kit Harington portraying Jon Snow. Yeah, they're both INFJs. It doesn't count. So, but yes, we are that scowl, that glower that we have when we're just pissed off at the world is unique to us in its intensity and also it's sometimes in its subtlety. That look we have when someone can look at us and everybody says to you, what's wrong? And we don't want to talk to anybody. We just want to shut the world out. So, being INFJs, you know, an NITI loop is one of the ways that look can be on our face. We're very, very bad at faking, at being able to fake we're all happy and cheerful. So if we're actually feeling like shit, it's going to show on our face. And we often then start to feel guilty because everybody, wants to try to get us out of that moodiness, and very few people actually know how to do it. Platitudes and everything will be okay, cliches just piss us off more. If you see an INFJ with that, brooding glower on their face, if you don't have like substantive advice on whatever they're going through that can actually, help their situation, best leave them alone. We can be too harsh. We love giving helpful advice, and we're often able to see a situation from many sides. That's true. But if you want to hear only what you want to hear, we're not the people to come to. Often, people that seek the advice of an INFJ already know something doesn't feel quite right or something is too good to be true, but they don't want to admit it, so they want, to use someone who they know won't bullshit them as a soundboard. And we'll often, just be brutally honest with our intuitive cues. Sometimes that can be too harsh on people, especially if they're in that, but I want to believe kind of mode. And, a lot of times we're not doing it out of malice. We're trying to get that person to open up their eyes and being like, he's a scumbag. Your boss is abusing you. You're being exploited. Please listen to me. Stop telling yourself everything's going to be okay, because it's not. Listen to me. And then sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And when they don't, most of the time exactly what we said was going to happen sadly happens. So there's also another instance. This is my own theory that I've had prior to even knowing what an INFJ was, but I noticed this even as a kid with liars and fakers, that somehow I could like see through them, and I would do this thing what I termed as spotlighting, meaning that, and this I'll probably do its own video on sometimes, that my intuitive cues, even knew I didn't have evidence to back it up, were right. And if they were berating or taking advantage of somebody I'd care about, I would just somehow find a way to spew all my intuitive thoughts out in front of a large crowd. And I described it as if I was shining a spotlight on them, but in the most negative way possible. Not making stuff up, but just stuff that it's like, I don't know that for a fact, but I know it's true. And usually 90% of it would end up being true, and the person would react accordingly, either burst into tears or take a swing at me. But again, things we do. Bottling up negative emotions. Yeah. So when we're feeling negative and down, isolation, that's our number one thing. We will isolate ourselves, stuff that down to where it develops into acid reflux and other like afflictions. We'll let our negative emotions completely consume our own head. We'll try like hell to get them out of our mind, but never really deal with them. We'll just kind of be like, yeah, it'll go away somehow, and we'll try to distract ourselves and not think about it, and we'll just keep doing that when it comes around again. Eventually, it'll boil up to a point where we can't ignore it anymore, and then we must deal with it. But again, it's something that needs to be done in a substantive manner. It can't be dealt with, generalities and platitudes and cliches, because that'll just piss us off. Abruptly cutting people out of our lives, infamously known as the INFJ door slam, which is not always a bad thing. So, betrayal. INFJs, both real and fictional, betrayal's a big no-no. If someone betrays our trust because we're so selective with who we trust, we will cut that person out of our lives. And in a sense that not where it's like, vengeance will be mine kind of way, more in a you don't exist, you're dead to me. Like, you don't, who are you? I don't, yeah, have we even ever met? Kind of thing. And I've done it, and I'm sure every INFJ has. We just have to be sure that when we do that, that the reasons that we're shutting that person out are without a doubt true, and in some instances, it is the best thing you can possibly do, is to shut that person out. That's a common thing in dealing with narcissistic abuse, the infamous no contact. So, those are some darker aspects of the INFJ personality, things that, people sometimes forget that are a part of our personality, especially a lot of times in, like I said, in fictional characters and in MBTI articles. The INFJ is almost deified for our uniqueness and rarity. However, like everyone else, we do have our flaws, but these flaws, like most flaws, are a spectrum. It's not a black or white kind of thing. Sometimes our reactions are justified, but it's things that everyone who knows an INFJ, is an INFJ, or deals with an INFJ should know the darker aspects of the personality type. Thank you for taking the time. Again, please like and subscribe to help this video and others like it reach other people. And be aware of the darker sides of your own personality type, whatever it is. Understand why you're going into that state of mind. And if you're an INFJ, even if you're in a darker state of mind, remember to trust your intuition, because sometimes door slamming a person is the best option. And no matter how dark you feel, never sell out your integrity.